The massive silver doors of the Intergalactic Learning Institute slid open with a soft whoosh. Krath stepped through, his 4 insect-like legs clicking nervously against the polished floor. His compound eyes scanned the enormous lobby filled with creatures from dozens of different worlds. Some had tentacles, others had wings, and a few looked like walking crystals. This was his first time away from the hive worlds. Everything here seemed so strange and different. The air smelled funny, and the gravity felt lighter than back home. His translation device buzzed against his neck, working hard to convert all the alien languages floating around him. A small floating robot approached him. "Welcome to the Institute. Please follow the blue line to your dormitory assignment," it said in a mechanical voice. Krath followed the glowing blue strip on the floor through twisting corridors. The walls showed pictures of famous graduates from across the galaxy. Scientists, diplomats, and explorers who had changed the universe. He hoped he could live up to their example. Room 847B. This was it. Krath pressed his claw against the door scanner. It beeped and slid open. Inside, the room was split into 2 sides. One side already had belongings scattered around. Strange objects he didn't recognize. Clothes that looked too small for most species he knew. And pictures of a blue and green planet stuck to the wall. "Hey there." Krath jumped backward, nearly falling over his own legs. A creature stood in the doorway behind him. It had pale skin, brown fur only on its head, and walked on just 2 legs. This had to be his roommate. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you," the creature said, showing its teeth. Krath tensed, thinking this was a threat display, until he remembered reading that some species showed teeth when happy. "You must be Krath. I'm James Wilson from Earth." The human extended one of its limbs toward him. Krath stared at it for a moment, confused. "Oh right, handshake," James said, pulling his hand back. "Different greeting customs. Nice to meet you anyway." "Greetings, James of Earth," Krath replied, his voice sounding squeaky through the translator. "I am pleased to make your acquaintance." James smiled again and started unpacking a bag. "So what's your species like? I've never met anyone from the hive worlds before." "We are a collective society," Krath explained, relaxing slightly. "We work together for the good of all." "What about humans?" "Oh, we're pretty social too. We live in families, have pets, that sort of thing." James pulled out what looked like a small rectangular device. "Actually, speaking of pets, I should mention something. My companion animal will be arriving next week. Hope that's okay with you." Krath's antennae twitched. "Companion animal?" "Yeah, my dog. His name's Maximum." James activated the device, and a 3-dimensional image appeared above it. The creature in the picture made Krath's entire body freeze. It was covered in golden fur and was much larger than he had expected. Its mouth was open, showing rows of sharp white teeth. Its eyes looked alert and intelligent. Most terrifying of all, its ears were pointed forward like it was hunting something. "Golden Retriever," James continued happily. "He's been with my family for 8 years. Best friend a guy could have. He's really excited to see a new world." Krath tried to keep his voice steady. "It is, quite large." "Oh yeah, Max is a big boy. About 30 kilograms. But don't worry, he's super friendly. Loves meeting new people." James seemed completely unaware of Krath's growing panic. "He'll probably want to sniff you when he gets here. That's how dogs say hello." After James left for his orientation meeting, Krath immediately rushed to his study terminal. His claws clicked rapidly as he accessed the galactic database. He had to know more about this creature that would soon be living in his room. The search results made his worst fears seem small. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. The entry explained that it was a planet where nearly everything was designed to kill everything else. Extreme weather, natural disasters, and creatures that seemed built for violence. Then he found the entry on Canis Lupus Familiaris, domestic dogs. His entire exoskeleton shuddered as he read. Pack hunters. Bite force strong enough to crush bone. Excellent night vision and hearing. Ability to track scent across vast distances. Originally descended from wolves, apex predators that hunted in groups. The database showed pictures of these dogs in action. Some were attacking training dummies. Others were chasing down fleeing targets. All of them looked terrifying. But the most frightening part was a note at the bottom of the entry. Humans commonly keep these predators in their homes, often allowing them to interact with their offspring. Krath sent an urgent message to the other exchange students on his floor. Emergency warning. Human student James Wilson has requested permission to bring Class 12 Death World Predator to dormitories. Creature designation dog, pack hunter with bone-crushing bite force. Recommend extreme caution and possible evacuation protocols. Within minutes, his communicator was buzzing with panicked responses from his fellow students. Word spread quickly through the dormitory levels. The human had somehow tamed one of his planet's most dangerous creatures and planned to bring it here. As Krath settled into his sleeping alcove that night, he wondered what kind of species could casually live alongside such monsters. Were humans themselves predators? Was James more dangerous than he appeared? One thing was certain, next week was going to be very interesting. The transport bay buzzed with nervous energy. Word had spread through the entire dormitory about the arriving Earth predator. Krath stood behind a thick safety barrier with nearly 50 other alien students, all keeping what they hoped was a safe distance from the landing platform. Vila, the blue-skinned Aquarian girl from the room next door, whispered to him through her water-filled breathing mask. "Are you sure about this creature's danger level?" "The database was very clear," Krath replied, his voice shaking slightly. "Pack hunter. Bone-crushing bite. Territorial instincts." Behind them, Zorn from the warrior clans checked his personal shield generator for the third time. Even the famously brave fighters from his world seemed worried. "My grandfather fought Earth creatures during the border wars. He said they were relentless." 3 security guards in full armor stood near the landing pad, their stun weapons ready. The Institute's safety protocols had never been activated for a student's pet before, but Director Quill had decided not to take any chances with a Death World predator. The transport ship touched down with a soft thud. Steam hissed from its cooling vents as the engines powered down. James walked forward eagerly, completely ignoring the crowd of frightened aliens behind him. He looked excited, like a youngling waiting for a birthday present. "How can he be so calm?" Vila asked. "Doesn't he understand what's about to come out of that ship?" The cargo door began to open with a slow mechanical whine. Every alien in the transport bay held their breath. Kratha's compound eyes focused on the dark opening, waiting for the snarling beast to emerge. "Max. Here, boy." James called out in his strange human language. What happened next defied everything Krath thought he knew about predators. A large golden shape burst from the transport, but instead of attacking or hunting, it ran straight toward James. Its tail moved back and forth so fast it was almost a blur. Strange happy sounds came from its throat, not growls or snarls, but something that sounded almost musical. "Who's a good boy? Who's the best boy in the galaxy?" James said, his voice higher and more excited than usual. He dropped down to his knees as the creature reached him. The fearsome predator did something that made every alien in the bay gasp in confusion. It jumped up and began licking James's face with its pink tongue. Its whole body wiggled with what could only be described as pure joy. "I don't understand," Zorn muttered, his hand still on his weapon. "The creature appears to be showing affection." James was laughing now, trying to avoid the enthusiastic face-licking while scratching the animal behind its ears. "I missed you too, buddy." "Yes, I did. Did you have a good trip?" Max, because that's clearly who this was, made happy whining sounds and pressed his head against James's chest. His tongue hung out of his mouth as he panted, and his tail continued its rapid movement. One of the security guards lowered his weapon slightly. "Sir, the creature doesn't appear to be hostile." "Hostile?" James looked up, noticing the crowd of nervous aliens for the first time. "Oh. Everyone, come meet Max. He's super friendly." Max turned toward the crowd of aliens, and several students took quick steps backward. But instead of charging at them with bared teeth, the dog simply sat down next to James and tilted his head to one side, looking curious. James reached into his pocket and pulled out a small blue ball. "Want to play fetch, boy?" He threw the ball down the long corridor leading away from the transport bay. Max immediately leaped up and chased after it, his powerful legs carrying him quickly across the smooth floor. But instead of destroying the toy or eating it, he picked it up gently in his mouth and ran back to James. The dog dropped the ball at James's feet and looked up at him with bright, intelligent eyes. His tail wagged as he waited for James to throw it again. "The predator, it returned the object," Vila said slowly. "It's playing a game." "That's what dogs do," James explained, throwing the ball again. "They love to play. Max here could play fetch for hours if you let him." A small alien student from the Crystal Worlds raised a tentative appendage. "But the database said they were dangerous pack hunters." "Well, they can be protective when they need to be," James said, catching the ball that Max brought back. "But mostly they just want to be with their families. Watch this." James lay down on the ground and pretended to be hurt, making fake groaning sounds. Immediately, Max was beside him, nudging him gently with his nose and whimpering with worry. The dog's entire body language changed from playful to concerned. "He's checking to make sure I'm okay," James explained, sitting up and patting Max's head. "If I were really hurt, he'd stay with me and bark to call for help." Then James did something that made every alien student freeze in terror. He rolled Max over onto his back and started rubbing the dog's belly. Max's legs kicked happily in the air as he enjoyed the attention. "You're touching its vulnerable areas," Krath said in shock. "Any predator would attack to protect itself." "Max trusts me completely," James said. "Just like I trust him. That's what 30,000 years of partnership looks like." The crowd of alien students stood in stunned silence, watching the savage Earth predator wiggle happily while getting belly rubs from his human companion. The xenobiology classroom had never been so crowded. Students from every floor of the dormitory had squeezed into the lecture hall to hear James explain the mystery of Maximum. Even Professor Quill, the tentacled instructor, seemed curious about the peaceful predator lying calmly at James's feet. Max yawned and stretched, completely unaware that he was the center of galactic attention. His pink tongue rolled out as he settled into a comfortable position on the cool floor. "Before we start," James said, looking at the sea of alien faces, "I want to show you something about Earth." He activated the wall display, and suddenly the room filled with images of his home planet. Rolling green hills, vast blue oceans, and snow-covered mountains appeared on the screen. It looked beautiful and peaceful. "Looks nice, right?" James continued. "But here's what the database doesn't tell you about living there." The next image showed a massive storm with winds that could destroy buildings. Then came pictures of earthquakes splitting the ground open, volcanoes spewing liquid rock, and floods that covered entire cities. Krath's antennae twitched nervously. "Your planet attacks its own inhabitants." "Pretty much," James laughed. "Earth's gravity is stronger than most worlds. Our air has more oxygen, which makes everything burn hotter and faster. We have ice ages, asteroid impacts, and weather that changes from freezing to burning hot in a single day." Vila raised her hand. "How does any creature survive in such conditions?" "That's where it gets interesting," James said. "Everything on Earth had to become tough, smart, or cooperative to live. The weak creatures died out millions of years ago." He showed them pictures of Earth animals. Lions with powerful muscles and sharp claws. Eagles with incredible eyesight and razor beaks. Sharks with rows of deadly teeth. "These are some of our predators," James explained. "Each one is perfectly designed to hunt and kill. But humans didn't try to fight them all. Instead, we made friends with some of them." The next image showed an ancient human sitting by a fire. Next to him sat a wolf, much larger and more dangerous looking than Maximum. But the wolf wasn't attacking. It was sharing the warmth of the fire. "This happened about 30,000 years ago," James said. "Humans and wolves discovered they could help each other. Wolves were better at tracking and hunting. Humans were better at making tools and fire. Together, they could survive things that would kill them alone." Zorn leaned forward in his seat. "You formed an alliance with predators." "Not just an alliance," James corrected. "A partnership. The wolves that worked best with humans had babies. The humans who treated wolves well lived longer. Over thousands of generations, both species changed." Max looked up at the sound of his name and wagged his tail. James reached down to scratch his ears, and the dog's eyes closed in contentment. "See how Max responds to my touch?" James asked. His ancestors were wild wolves, but thousands of years of partnership bred that wildness out of him. "We kept all the useful traits, loyalty, intelligence, protective instincts, but removed the aggression toward humans." A small student from the crystal world spoke up. "But he still has the physical capabilities of a predator." "Absolutely," James agreed. "Max could bite through metal if he wanted to. His hearing is 10 times better than mine. He can smell things from kilometers away. But watch what happens when I use these abilities." James pulled out a small device and pressed a button. It made a high-pitched sound that most of the aliens couldn't hear. Max immediately stood up and tilted his head, listening carefully. "Max, find," James said quietly. The dog's entire behavior changed. His playful demeanor became focused and serious. He put his nose to the ground and began moving around the classroom, sniffing carefully. After a few moments, he stopped at Professor Quill's desk and sat down, looking back at James. "There's a treat hidden in the professor's desk drawer," James explained. Max found it using the same tracking abilities his ancestors used to hunt mammoth. But instead of hunting prey, he's helping me find lost objects. Professor Quill opened his desk drawer and found a small wrapped food item that James had placed there earlier. The class murmured in amazement. The same nose that could track wounded animals now helps us find missing people after disasters, James continued. The same teeth that could crush bone now gently carry our babies to safety. The same pack loyalty that made wolves deadly hunters now makes Max willing to die protecting any human child. To demonstrate, James called a volunteer from the audience. Krath nervously approached, his legs clicking on the floor. James introduced him to Max, who sniffed the insectoid student curiously but gently. Max, friend, James said, pointing to Krath. From that moment on, Max treated Krath like part of his pack. When the insectoid student sat down, Max moved to sit beside him protectively. When Krath stood up, Max followed, staying close enough to help if needed. This is what we mean by domestication, James explained. We didn't break their spirit or make them weak. We redirected their natural instincts toward cooperation instead of competition. The class sat in stunned silence as they watched the fearsome predator gently nuzzle Krath's arm, offering comfort to a creature he had just met. On Earth, James concluded, we learned that survival isn't about being the strongest or the most dangerous. It's about building relationships, making alliances, and turning enemies into family. Max isn't my pet, he's my partner. The biochemistry lab was usually a quiet place where students mixed chemicals and studied reactions. But on this particular Tuesday afternoon, something went terribly wrong. Dr. Nexus, a floating gas-based being from the ethereal sector, was showing his advanced class how to rebuild molecules. The experiment required careful control of energy fields to break apart water and put it back together again. Remember, Dr. Nexus said, his voice echoing from within his containment suit, the energy levels must remain exactly balanced or... The explosion wasn't huge, but it was loud enough to shake the entire building. Sparks flew everywhere as the containment field collapsed. The energy blast hit the ceiling, causing chunks of metal and concrete to crash down onto the laboratory floor. When the smoke cleared, 3 students were trapped under the heavy debris. Krath lay pinned beneath a large piece of ceiling, his left legs bent at strange angles. Vila was conscious but stuck under a fallen lab table, her breathing mask cracked and leaking. A young student from the gas giants floated weakly in a damaged life support bubble. Emergency services are 15 minutes away, Dr. Nexus announced, his voice filled with worry. The debris is too heavy for most species to move safely. That's when James arrived with Max for their scheduled study session. He took one look at the disaster scene and immediately understood the situation. Max, search, James commanded, his voice calm but urgent. The change in Max was instant and remarkable. The playful dog who had been wagging his tail in the hallway became a focused working animal. His ears pointed forward, his nose went to the ground, and his entire body became alert and purposeful. Max moved quickly through the rubble, sniffing carefully at each pile of debris. His enhanced senses could detect things that no alien technology could find, the sound of breathing, the scent of fear, the warmth of living bodies trapped below. He reached Krath first. The dog barked twice, a sharp, clear sound that James understood immediately. Survivor here, James called to Dr. Nexus. Krath is under this section. Max began to work. His powerful jaws, which had terrified the alien students just weeks ago, now became precision tools. He carefully gripped chunks of concrete and metal, using his strength to move pieces that would have taken 3 aliens working together. But it wasn't just his physical power that impressed the rescue team. Max seemed to understand exactly how much force to use. When he found a piece of debris that might hurt Krath if moved wrong, he stopped and whined softly, calling James over to help guide the removal. Incredible, whispered one of the emergency responders, a mantis-like creature with 4 arms. The animal understands structural engineering. Not engineering, James corrected as he helped Max move a large beam. Pack hunting. His ancestors had to work together to bring down prey much larger than themselves. They learned to be careful, patient, and precise. Max is using those same instincts to hunt for survivors instead of prey. Max found Vila next, barking his alert signal. Her situation was more dangerous. The lab table pinning her down was supporting other debris. Moving it wrong could cause another collapse. The dog seemed to sense this. Instead of trying to move the table, he began digging carefully around its edges, creating space for the rescue team to work. His claws, evolved for gripping and tearing, now scraped away small pieces of rubble with delicate precision. The creature is thinking ahead, Dr. Nexus observed. It understands cause and effect. When they finally freed Vila, she was barely conscious. Her breathing mask was completely broken, and she was struggling to process the station's air. Max immediately moved to her side, lying down next to her to provide warmth and comfort. The dog's presence seemed to calm her. Even through her pain and confusion, some instinct told her that this large predator was there to help, not harm. She reached out weakly and touched his fur, and Max responded by gently licking her hand. The third rescue was the most challenging. The student from the gas giants was trapped in a space too small for the adult rescue workers to reach. But Max, despite his size, managed to squeeze through a gap in the debris. They could hear him working in the tight space, his tags jingling as he moved. After several minutes, he emerged, carefully pulling the damaged life support bubble with his teeth. The young gas being inside was weak but alive. By the time the official emergency team arrived, Max had helped save all 3 students. The savage predator that had caused such fear was covered in dust and tired from his efforts, but his tail still wagged when James praised him. "Good boy, Maximum. Such a good boy," James said, giving him a well-deserved scratch behind the ears. Krath, now lying on a medical stretcher, looked up at the dog who had saved his life. "I was wrong about your companion, James. Max is not a predator, he is a protector." "Actually, he's both," James replied. "The same instincts that made his ancestors successful hunters made him a successful rescuer today. The difference is in how we direct those instincts." As the medical teams carried the injured students to the hospital wing, Max walked proudly beside them, still on duty. His natural pack mentality meant he wouldn't rest until he was sure all his new pack members were safe. Word of the rescue spread quickly through the institute. The terrifying Earth beast had become the campus hero, proving that sometimes the most fearsome qualities could become the most valuable gifts. 3 months had passed since Max's heroic rescue in the laboratory. The Intergalactic Learning Institute felt like a completely different place now. Where once alien students had avoided the human dormitory section, they now gathered there regularly to visit with the famous Earth dog. Krath found himself in the common room every evening, his homework spread across the low table while Max dozed peacefully at his feet. The insectoid's injured legs had healed well, but he still moved carefully. Max seemed to sense this and stayed close, ready to help if his friend stumbled. "James," Krath said, looking up from his study pad, "I have been researching more Earth animals. You mentioned creatures called cats." James grinned from his spot on the couch. "Oh yeah, cats are great. My sister Emma has 2 back home. They're completely different from dogs, though." "Different how?" asked Vila, who was floating in her portable water tank nearby. She had become fascinated by Earth biology since the rescue. "Well, cats were originally desert hunters," James explained. "Small, fast, deadly to rodents and birds. But humans convinced them to live with us too. Now they mostly sleep in sunny spots and knock things off tables just to watch them fall." Max opened one eye at the mention of cats, then closed it again with what looked like amusement. Even he seemed to understand the joke. A new student named Roth from the Ice Worlds looked confused. "Your species partners with multiple types of predators." "Predators, prey animals, even tiny creatures you can barely see," James said. "We have horses, big strong animals that used to run from hunters. Now they carry us around and compete in races. We have birds that help us find food, insects that make our crops grow, even bacteria in our stomachs that help us digest meals." Zorn, the warrior student, had been listening quietly in the corner. He stood up and walked over to Max, who immediately rolled onto his back for belly rubs. The fearsome fighter from the warrior clans had become one of Max's favorite visitors. "My people have always believed that strength comes from conquest," Zorn said, scratching Max's belly. "We defeat our enemies and take their resources. But humans, you turn enemies into allies. You make friends with creatures that could kill you." "It's not always easy," James admitted. "It takes time, patience, and a lot of trust from both sides. Sometimes it doesn't work. But when it does, both species become stronger together than either was alone." To prove his point, James pulled out his communication device and showed them a video from Earth. It showed a human child, maybe 5 years old, playing in a yard with a dog even larger than Maximum. The child was riding on the dog's back while the massive animal walked carefully around the garden. "That's my cousin's daughter with their Saint Bernard," James said. "That dog weighs twice as much as she does and could hurt her without even trying. But he would die before letting anything happen to her." The alien students watched in amazement as the video showed the huge dog gently taking a ball from the child's hands and giving it back when she reached for it. "The child has no fear," Vila observed. "She trusts the predator completely." "Because on Earth, children grow up with these partnerships," James explained. To us, it's completely normal to share our homes with creatures that were once wild. We forget how strange it might seem to other species. Dr. Nexus floated into the common room, his gas form shimmering inside its containment suit. James, I've been analyzing the data from Max's rescue performance. His problem-solving abilities rival those of many sentient species. Max looked up at the professor and wagged his tail, recognizing a friend. That's another thing about dogs, James said. Thousands of years of working with humans made them incredibly smart. They can learn our languages, understand our emotions, even predict our health problems before we know about them ourselves. A small student from the crystalline sector raised a shining appendage. But how did your ancestors know which animals could become partners? Trial and error, mostly, James laughed. Lots of mistakes over thousands of years. Some animals just can't work with others. But the ones that could, well, they changed both of our species forever. As if to demonstrate this point, Max got up and walked to each student in the room. He seemed to remember that Kraft still needed gentle treatment because of his healing legs. He was more playful with Vila, who enjoyed his silly antics. With Zorn, he was calm and respectful, understanding that warriors appreciated dignity. He treats each of you differently because he's learned your personalities, James pointed out. That's not just training, that's intelligence and empathy working together. The conversation was interrupted when James's communication device chimed. A video message from Earth appeared, showing his family gathered around their dinner table. His parents, his sister Emma, and 2 cats were visible in the image. "Hi James," his sister called out. "How's Max doing at space school?" The alien students crowded around to see the Earth family. They watched as one of the cats jumped onto the table and was gently moved away by James's mother. No one seemed worried about the predator in their home. "When I return to my homeworld," Kraft said quietly, "I will tell my people about the humans who learned to make families from their enemies." Max settled back down at James's feet, completely unaware that he had become a symbol of something much larger than himself. To him, life was simple. He had his human, he had new friends to protect, and he had a warm place to sleep. But to the galaxy, he represented something revolutionary, proof that love could be stronger than fear, and that the greatest strength sometimes came not from defeating your enemies, but from making them your family.